This is low energy, Jeremy. Have I gotten trash sleep? Yes. Did this movie emotionally wreck me? Yes. Are these compounding to be low energy me today? Yes. But I love talking about good movies, so here we go. So Iron Claw is written and directed by Sean Durkin, and it's a biopic about the family of wrestling royalty, the Von Erichs. More specifically, the tragedy that befell this family between the early 80s and early 90s. The film stars an almost unrecognizable Zac Efron as Kevin Von Erich, and my God, this dude put in the work, both emotionally and physically, to a point where I'm concerned for his health. It's a lot of bulking up, man. I'm not a doctor, but Mike, he looks like he's going to war for the Imperium. The man is built like Warhammer armor. Another Warhammer reference for you. Second one this week. I know you like him. Is this the best performance of his career? Out of doubt, without a question. We've seen him take roles lately where you can tell he's like, I want to be taken seriously as a dramatic actor. And yeah, there's a lot riding on his shoulders. This is a movie about family, more specifically, the brotherly love among a group of brothers. But the film's seen through his eyes. There's a lot of emotional weight on his shoulders. Dude absolutely crushed it. Now, I didn't know the story of the Von Erichs. It's one of those names I've heard. Like when someone's like, oh, do you know about the Von Erichs? I'm like, this sounds familiar. But I've never lived in Texas, and I was locked into wrestling for a time, that time being when I found out when you're NWO for life. Locked into that shit anytime it was on in the 90s. So I was going into this movie pretty fresh, never saw a trailer, didn't know what it was about. Safe to say, in the words of the great Illidan, you are not prepared. That said, I will brace you a bit of what this is about. This is a film about loss. Thing is, you don't just see the loss. It's not just a biopic telling a story. It is that, but you're not just seeing the loss, you are feeling the loss. The film does build up the brotherly love to a point where you feel every loss fractures the souls of the remaining brothers. I would call it almost biblical in that sense. The phrase I'm trying to say is it just feels that real. That first loss feels like that first tip of the domino in which this family just goes on a downward emotional spiral. There is unexpected light, levity in the movie in the form of hope. And that's Lily James. When dealing with this much loss, darkness, and sorrow, it's easy to feel like the walls are closing in. She's such an anchor. You know, I appreciate that about the film. I love me a good cinematic emotional wrecking the week of Christmas as much as the next person, but I did appreciate that Zac Efron's character, Kevin Von Erich, has that feeling of hope in the form of love. All these elements come together to feel like a biopic that's not just, hey, here's pain for the sake of pain. And it did a good job at illustrating the family dynamic that sets up the emotional state of the sons as they go down this road. The ball-busting father, amazingly played by Holt McCallany, who set up a competitive dynamic among the brothers. He's the textbook case. The father who didn't get to fulfill his dreams, didn't really get his shot, so he's trying to live his dreams through his sons. But he's talking to his sons at the breakfast table, and he's like, no, you're my favorite, then you, then you. But the rankings can change. I was like, this doesn't seem healthy. Is the father, Fritz von Erich, responsible for his sons who took their own lives? Is the subject of much heated debate on the internet. Without pointing fingers, I will say the parental tactics shown in the movie are not conducive to happiness. However, the more interesting thing is it would have been so easy for the movie to be like, and that's why the sons hated the father. But it showed how they loved their father and wanted to live up to him. They wanted to live up to his expectations. They wanted to make him proud, which makes it more sad, but also more common. And although Zac Efron is the star, he's the audience's eyes. He's our vessel taking us through this emotional roller coaster. It's not the Zac Efron show. This is a movie where a lot of characters, a lot of actors have that moment to shine. There were a couple of things in this movie. We'll call them nitpicks. Well, one in particular feels like a nitpick. The other one's worth addressing. The nitpick one is that there are wrestlers in this movie that are recognizable to me, like Ric Flair. I know who that is. He was with WCW when I watched WCW. So Ric Flair in this movie just felt like, well, someone doing a Ric Flair impersonation. Like when he's backstage in the locker room talking, I'm like, All right, that feels real. That feels like Ric Flair. When he was being Ric Flair, the character in the ring, the trash talking session before the match, that's when it felt like an impersonation. If for nothing else, it shows how these wrestling personalities are lightning in a bottle. Very hard to replicate an actor being a wrestling persona for a movie. The other one is there's a brother that's just not in this movie. Yeah, after the movie, I was like, okay, let's look into this. Where's that brother? Yeah, a whole brother just not in it. In a movie that's all about the brothers, it's weird that he was left out. Cinematically speaking, I do understand the argument as to why. Whether it's the drama's going on for long enough, it would have made it longer, and it's a lot of pain to sit through. We don't have Martin Scorsese or Quentin Tarantino's wit to blend into the drama to lighten it up. I see the arguments. There's a part of me that gets it, but there's also another part of me that's like, well, if you're talking about this family's pain, that's a real person who also experienced that. But in the end, man, this movie is an emotional roller coaster, to say the least. It's one that I didn't know what to expect from it. Really glad I watched it. But if you are down for experiencing this emotional story, it will stick with you. This is one of those movies that surprised me, because I got out of the theater and I was like, oh wow, that was emotional. And it wasn't until I was laying in bed, waiting to go to sleep, I started replaying it in my mind, really thinking about it. That's when the emotional weight of all of it really started to hit me. It's a story about fathers, sons, and family, and the power in a family, the power to both hurt and heal. This one's worth watching and worth buying on Blu-ray. So the Iron Claw, have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever you thought, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.